Hello, Internet, and thank you for joining me today. So, I just watched Avatar Fire and Ash, and it was fine, I guess. It's probably the most fine movie I've watched in quite some time. Just to kind of preface this video, I have no plan for this. I am just kind of flying by the seat of my pants. Originally, I had planned to do a Way of Water video because I said I was going to watch that, and I did, but life gets in the way. I've got like a whole three-quarters of the script done for that one, but yeah, it did not come together because I've got other life things going on. So I just want to yap at you after I watched the third one here. Uh, I've got some images pulled up that I'm just going to kind of go through because I don't want to deal with any of the copyright bullshit, and I cannot be bothered to edit this video. So I'm just going to be yapping. I'll do spoilers towards the very end when I do a story section because I actually organized my notes on this a little bit. I'll give you another update, like another warning before I go into actual spoilers. All right. And I still plan on making that Way of Water video, but this is just what I can get out right now. And I want to get out this video and at least one other video this year before we go into 2026. I don't know if that's going to be a top 10. I don't know if that's going to be a Christmas video. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, for right now, I'm doing this. And to start off with my criticism of Avatar Fire and Ash, let's talk about the tech, because that's the only thing I can really unabashedly praise, because it's good for the most part. There's a couple of things in there that are not good, specifically with the character of Spider here, this guy. He's the... let me double check this. Yeah, no. He's the only real character in this, like the real person in most of the scenes he's in. So he's just, staring off into space, all boggle-eyed and wall-eyed like a fish, because there's nothing for him to act off of. So I really feel bad saying that the actor can't carry this role and he's not a good actor, but he really gives a very bad performance, and I think that has a lot to do with he's got nothing to react off of. If I had thought ahead, I could have done the Gandalf thing where Ian McKellen is sitting there just crying as he sits alone in a room, but I did not think that far ahead, so I don't have that clip queued up. And I'm not going to go back in the editing and do that because I'm doing this by myself. Anyway, yeah, tech's good overall. I mean, everything looks nice and polished. It does have the problem that most things like it have, that there's no weight to anything. Like, I'm watching Gachi right now, and they do such a good job of, even though it's anime, even though it's, ink on a cell, or in this case it's probably in a computer or whatever, but it's not a real person doing a real thing. They do, in fact, give everything a lot of weight, and the way that they're able to animate everything makes it look very good. It makes me invested in the world that they are building because everything seems to have a weight to it. But in Avatar, it just seems like everybody's just kind of floating. They don't seem to have like a gravity to them, because there's several times where people are falling because this movie's about 80% chase sequence, but they have characters falling, and whenever they collide with another object, you expect there to be like a sound and like an impact on that. But we really don't get anything like that. They don't like take fall damage, is what I'm trying to say. But anyway, everything looks fine other than that. Outside of it, there's really not a lot to talk about here, but it's kind of the only thing that I can praise without any kind of backhanded compliment. which makes sense because James Cameron basically staked his whole fucking career on this thing. So yeah, he did good on the effects. But moving on to the characters, I picked out just some that make me it made me think at least of them. And we're going to start off with the fire girl from this one. The one from the, I don't think this isn't even a full image of the poster, but this fire chick right here. She's also here. Whatever. Name's Varang. Yeah, I'm questioning that mostly because I really suck at pronouncing anybody's name. But on top of that, she really doesn't bring a lot of presence. Well, she does and she doesn't. Because on the one hand, I was most interested in her after she was introduced. But then, like many of the characters in this movie, she kind of just disappears for a huge swath of it. And I don't know if I don't feel like I need to have a spoiler warning for this because there's dozens of people that have already spoiled this. But yeah, her whole thing is that she doesn't like Awa because God did not save her tribe of people or whatever. And she is angry at them, and her whole tribe is angry at Awa. So she turns her back on them. She doesn't love them. She doesn't want anything to do with them. Unlike all the other Na'vi that seem to worship Awa and all that, she doesn't. She wants to just burn the whole place down. She's like a climate denier on crack. But she was really interesting in the beginning because that's kind of an interesting concept. But then they kind of just drop her from the story for a huge part of it. And then she takes a back seat to Colonel Quaritch. And I thought that was a really big missed opportunity because she was actually really interesting to me when she's talking about, like, hey, man, I'm going to take the Colonel dude as a sex slave, right? Like, that's kind of interesting to me. That's kind of fun, but they don't go in that direction. She immediately becomes submissive to Colonel Quaritch, and that just kind of sucks. And they kind of don't know what to do with her about halfway into the movie. I'm saying halfway to be generous, but yeah. Anyway, that's her. She's fun until she isn't, much like a lot of this movie. But yeah, moving on to Colonel Quaritch. He's still in this fucking franchise, even though he died in the first one. He kind of should have died in the second one, but then at the last minute they had Spider save him. I guess spoilers for Way of Water, but if you haven't seen that one, but you've seen the first one, congratulations, you've seen Way of Water. But anyway, moving on to Colonel Quaritch in this movie, he really ends up being the most interesting part of the movie. He really doesn't start off that way. I was really bummed to hear that they brought him back in Way of Water. Like, they literally just say, oh yeah, you're a copy, right? Which really just kind of retcons why somebody like Jake Sully was used, because their whole thing was, oh hey, we don't want to spend another $11 bajillion on an Avatar clone of somebody, so we're sending in Jake Sully, who has no training with this, but, whatever. And so when they brought back Colonel Quaritch, and they're like, hey, we spent $11 bajillion to make you a clone so that if you ever died, you could come back and get revenge, which just seems really fucking stupid. But here we are in the third movie that he's been in, and there's an interesting idea in that he could have been more interesting, because like the idea, they play with this idea a lot that he is not Colonel Quaritch. He's not the exact same character from the first movie, so he can choose to do something different. But then he just never does. So, and they bring it up like 4 or 5 times, which is just silly to me. Like, either say it and move on, and maybe he thinks about it later on, and you can even put like an echo, whenever he makes his decision to not be a jerk anymore. But that's not what happens. He literally, up until the last moments of the movie, is just the same character from the first one, despite everyone telling him he's not. But I probably liked him the best out of everyone at the end. Like, I found him the most compelling because he does have that option that they keep reminding me of. But anyway, moving on to Jake. Okay, so Jake is the main character from the first movie, obviously, and he stops being the main character when the credits roll on that first movie. This is something I'm going to explore a little bit more in the story section of this, and I will expand a lot on in my Way of Water review if and when that gets made. But he's not the main character, and honestly, he just repeats himself so much that I could not take this character seriously anymore. I got so sick of seeing him. I was just like, okay, so he's basically just plot armor and main character, but not main character as a whole person, right? And it sucks. Oh, shit. I didn't move my... There we go. There's Jake. Yeah, and he really doesn't have, like, an evolution. Like, he evolves from the first one because, you know, he starts off as clone guy, but then he gets, you know, some dreads and whatnot. And you think he's going to, but he actually has negative plot progression in this movie, because at least in the second one, he was like, hey, I'm, you know, trying to be peaceful. I'm not trying to fight anybody, blah, blah, blah. But in this one, he just like, fuck it. I'm going to be, you know, big, badass warrior dude. And he also, you know what, never mind. I'm going to put a place marker in Jake because he kind of exemplifies a huge story problem. But for now, let's move on to Spider. And they try their damnedest to make this character fucking relevant. And I cannot for the life of me think that that was a good decision. Like, they make him a way bigger part of this movie, because in the second movie, he's kind of just there for most of the movie until like the last, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes when he becomes a bit more relevant. Like, he's kind of relevant in the way that he is related to Colonel Quaritch, right? We find out pretty early on that that's his son. And in that second movie, other than just giving a tutorial for Quaritch and his men, he doesn't do a whole lot. But in this one, he's like the main MacGuffin, a main reason, which I'll get again into spoilers more in story, but we'll just have to put a pin in him right now. But seriously, for him, he exemplifies what I'm going to explain a little bit later, that this movie is a fucking circle. So moving on though, we've got Neytiri. She's still in this movie, still in this franchise. Zoe Saldana plays her. It's probably my favorite Zoe Saldana role, mostly because she really isn't a good actor, right? Excuse me. Probably should edit that out, but I might not. We'll see. Anyway, going on to Neytiri, this is the biggest fuck you to the audience, I think, because they build up that she is, you know, mourning the death of her son from the second movie. Again, spoilers for Way of Water. One of the kids dies, but yeah, she's mourning him, and she thinks that, you know, oh, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to anybody ever, blah, blah, blah. And then they just kind of drop that. Like, as soon as she sees this other baby, she drops that shit hard, and she becomes a non-character, which admittedly is like 3 hours into the movie, which, oh my god, this movie was 3 hours fucking long. But it just really seems like once she sees a baby, she doesn't care about her dead fucking son. And the execution of her arc as a whole is so bad. Like, she yo-yos back and forth between like grieving mother to super protective mother to whatever. Her arc is bad. the character is bad, but I think Zoe Saldana probably does the best through the CGI makeup out of the entire cast. So anyway, yeah, and we also have to talk about the creepy Sigourney Weaver avatar, like Blue Cat Girl. Like this image really sums up one of my biggest problems with the Avatar 2 and 3 movies. This, I am engrossed enough into the Avatar world that this I can accept. I can accept that this character physically exists, okay? I'm immersed enough. But then when her voice starts coming out of it, I start to freak out. Like, my mind tells me that this is fucking wrong. You do not speak like her, because this voice has like 80 years of experience or some shit, and you're like 12 or something. I don't know how old this character is supposed to be, but yeah, it makes for an uncanny experience, and I hate it. And the plot line in this movie, it's a carryover obviously from the second one, but it resolves in the least satisfying way. Like, I don't know who thought it was a good idea that like she was just going to overcome her disability by really wanting to. Now, I get that like there's supposed to be like this whole thing with like Spider and the baby character, the youngest Sully family member, and there's supposed to be like strength in numbers or whatever, but she literally just pushes past all the limitations. Like we are told by the scientists that, hey, this is how we're supposed to go, right? This is how we're supposed to do things, and this is how the world works. And then they're just like, oh, actually, if you just try really hard, then you don't have to worry about any of that. And that is fucking stupid and unsatisfying. And the character herself is just creepy, and I kind of hate her. And yeah, anyway, moving to the last character here that I want to talk about, and that's I guess his name's Loak. I literally had to Google this before I started recording this, and Loak sucks. Like, he gets shit on by basically everyone. Like, his mom and his dad both act like they fucking hate him. And it's almost funny to me because by the end of Way of Water, I was so fucking done with them. I'm like, oh, hey, are they gonna, because they blame him for the eldest son's death. And so I'm like, oh, hey, are they going to like exile him? That'd be kind of funny because his whole thing is he can't live up to his dad's image or whatever, or his brother's image. And he never does. But then again, just like with Kiri, his whole arc, his whole story just fucking falls off a cliff. And they're like, oh, hey, it's fine. We wrapped it up. And they just say that it's resolved. Like, he didn't do much of anything. Like, I get there's symbolism in him talking to whales or whatever, and him getting to speak to the elder whales, I guess. I'm getting a little spoilery, but that's not too big of a deal. Because, yeah, like, it just kind of bugged me because, like, Jake literally looks at him and goes, oh, hey, you did a thing I couldn't do, so that makes you worthy of my love and praise. And it was never like, he's still not like his own character. Like, he still is just dependent. He's still defining himself as a person, as an individual, but only through his dad and his brother and his family. Like, he's not an individual. And that it made me laugh a little bit, but it was so unsatisfying. And before I move on to the story, I did just want to say one more thing about Varang. There's a part in this, and they do this a couple of times, and it's like a whole new lore update, because Varang will use her little hair tail thing and connect it to another Navi's hair tail thing, and it hurts them in some way. It's like shocking them or something. And it's later described that, like, it's not a unique thing to her. Which, given that these hairtail things are the things that... Oh, that's kind of a cool image. That'd be a lot cooler if that was in the movie. Anyway, the hairtail things are the things that they use to interface with, like, the gods and the animals and each other to make a baby. So, like, there's some really bad implications that you're forcing the hairtail thing to come together and it hurts. It's just... I couldn't shake it, man. I could not shake the feeling that that was a very uncomfortable territory that they were not fully addressing. But I do want to go ahead and just move on to the story, which is not this random fucking image. Look at this shit. Let me find an image that I'd be fine with. Sure, why not? Anyway, so... my biggest gripe with this movie, and it's the same biggest gripe that I had with the last movie in this series, and that is that there is no main character in this story. Jake's not the main character. Neither son is the main character. Kiri is not the main character. No one's the main character. Not even the Colonel. You know, he's the main villain, but we don't have somebody that we can attach ourselves to. Which is doubly shameful because Jake Sully as a character is supposed to be like the ultimate everyman, right? He's supposed to be the one guy that we're supposed to be able to paste ourselves onto. And it's wild to me that we don't ever focus on one character long enough to give them a full arc. And go ahead and take the pin out of Spider's story, because I'm going to go ahead and spoil a couple of things, because he gets turned into a MacGuffin, right? Where he essentially becomes a Na'vi. He doesn't go into an avatar body like Jake did, or like they tried to do with Sigourney Weaver's character. I cannot be fucked to remember her name, but yeah, he doesn't go into an avatar Na'vi body. He just essentially grows a hair tail and can breathe the air now. They kind of hand wave it with some science wibbly wobbly magic, and they say, oh yeah, it's a colony of whatever the spore is, and that's allowing him to breathe the air. But A, that should mean that he can't breathe the same air as the humans, but B, it would imply that the god that governs the world, because the god of this world is an actual, like, living, breathing entity, right? That they have accepted him or whatever. And they make this big point that, like, oh, hey, if the humans ever get a hold of this, then they'll be able to breathe the air and they'll come and colonize Pandora, which, put a pin in that, because I'm going to come back to it in just a second. But they basically make him the MacGuffin of this movie, but then they don't do anything kind of with him. He kind of disappears for huge chunks of the movie again. Like, he gets captured like 2-3 times, which everyone in this fucking movie gets captured 2-3 times, but Spider gets captured and we don't see him until later, and then Jake tries to kill him, which is supposed to be a big moment for Jake, but then, he doesn't kill him and is like, oh, this is the path we're taking, blah, 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 which, sure, that's nice character development, but then they don't ever follow up with that. Like, Spider's not like, oh, hey, what the fuck? You almost murdered me there? That's not cool. And he rejects, his Colonel Quaritch dad again and again and again, which just... it seems weird because they've ditched him like 3 times and they've told him that he's not a part of their family and whatnot. So, like, I don't know. It just would have felt more genuine if he had some resentment, or if he had made some statement like, oh, hey, I get it, but I forgive you, or something. But, yeah. And another thing about this story, and I'm not getting deep into the story here, obviously, but I'm just complaining about things in the story that I have to spoil things for. But anyway, all of the bad guys at the very end of the movie. Like, you've got the bad colonel lady, you've got the bad colonel dude, you've got the fire lady, you've got all them, right? All of them, either it's implied that they die off screen or they just run away. And they're obviously teasing like either a follow-up movie, a show, a comic book. I don't know. Like, I'm seeing a lot of comic book shit here, but I have not looked into this at all. Again, initial thoughts, whatever. I'm yapping way too much about this. Moving on. I guess the only guy that does die, as I'm looking through my notes here, is the whale killer dude that has the robot arm in this movie, but in the last movie, he was just the robot. He was just the whale killing dude. But, yeah, and come to think of it, I didn't put this in my notes or anything, but the Flight of the Conchords guy, I don't remember his name as an actor or as a character in this movie, but he breaks Jake Sully out and then just kind of disappears. Like, they never mention what happens to him. Like, is he just out there in the jungles of Pandora with a fucking mask just waiting to die because that battery's going to run out or whatever? I don't know. They don't really explain it, but that's really funny. And one of the big things about the movie is that the whales don't want to fight, right? All the whales don't want to fight people because they're like, oh, hey, fighting just leads to more fighting, whatever. And I mean, that's kind of a valid point. I get it. But at the same time, it's really fucking dumb because one guy runs in and says, but what if we did fight? And then they all just say, oh man, I hadn't thought of it that way. And that's just really, really fucking stupid to me. Like, it falls flat, and it's so disappointing that like they never engage with the idea of like, hey, what if we try talking to some of these people? Like, they're a business at the end of the day, but it's also really like inconsistent what they're trying to do, because in the first movie they're trying to get, magical MacGuffin metal or whatever. And then in the second movie, I mean, they kind of allude to that whole idea that humanity's dying and the world cannot be sustained. But like, is this the only fucking place they can live? A place that doesn't have a breathable atmosphere? Like, that seems like a pretty high up their priority to be able to breathe the air if they're going to come in. But I guess we wouldn't have the Native American allegory if we, tried to make sense out of that. But yeah, the whales peace thing is literally just set aside out of nowhere because they said it. They said, oh, hey, let's actually fight. Oh, okay. That's my best whale impression. But yeah, I think it was just an excuse to have a really big generic action scene. And The Way of Water and the original Avatar both did this, where they had like one big action scene at the very end where they Deus ex Deu it. I don't know how that would work because it's literally God from God, but literally Ewa just comes down and is like, yeah, the good guys win and the bad guys lose. That's the whole thing. It's so fucking unsatisfying that like everyone gets their ass kicked and they don't even like get to make one final stand type of a thing. They just like literally all the little marine life squid monsters come up and start eating all of the humans, which does not satisfy the overarching problem of the humans are going to come here and try to colonize this place. Like, they already have some of the scan data, right? They already scanned Spider once or whatever. If they could reverse engineer that, then yeah, they're going to come here and like fuck everything up, right? Which I get, it's like humans bad or whatever. Specifically, a certain tone of human, certain hue of human. But anyway, yeah, all those people are bad and they're coming here to take over Pandora. And that does not, they don't put that to bed. And this is supposed to be the ending of like the Sully trilogy, right? They're supposed to not make any more about Jake Sully after this, is what I've kind of read. I've heard about it online, but if this is the end for that, it is so deeply unsatisfying because none of the plots are like satisfied. Going back to, what was it, Kiri, her whole thing is she can't interface with Awa, right? And so when she does, she always gets rejected. And I guess that got interpreted as rejected. It was kind of that way in the second one. Like, she kept having seizures and almost dying. And they continue that here, but they specifically say, no, it's because Awa is rejecting you. And then she just pushes past that. Like, they all put their hands at the center and say, hey, teamwork makes the dream work. Like, her, Spider, and the baby all put their hands in and say that teamwork makes the dream work bit, and then that just works. And that's what summons Awa. And here's the thing. They did the exact same resolution as the first one, because in the first one, like, the big rhino thing and the panther things and stuff started fighting with them, right? And they didn't need to interface with Awa for that. They knew, right? So we have circled back around to exactly where we were at the end of the first movie, where we have kicked off, most of humanity from the planet, and everyone's happy, whatever. And so what, are they just going to come back for a third fucking time? That's just so lame. And I don't get why people wanted sequels to this movie. Like, the first movie was fine on its own. It made its money. It made a lot of its money. And now I don't get why we're continuing this story. Like, we could move on to other things. James Cameron. And I don't know. It just feels like wasted potential, because there was some things that I wouldn't have minded, but we don't do any of them. So I'm just unsatisfied is kind of my answer. But again, this is not a bad movie. If someone came up to me and said, hey, do you want to, marathon all 3 Avatar films for like New Year's? I'd be like, sure, why not? I mean, I'm not going to sit there and pay attention to the whole thing, but at the same time, I'm not going to protest it like it's the second coming of Satan's bitch or something. But like, we just don't live in a situation where I have to settle for James Cameron's leftovers, more or less. So again, not a bad movie, just not a good one, this is probably the worst one in the franchise, as this is just the same movie as the other ones in the franchise. And it's pretty par for the course, is what I'm trying to say here. And that's all I really have to say for today. This video has been much longer than I intended it to be, and I'm going to be super lazy and not edit a goddamn thing. And so if you like this, go ahead and show me by leaving a like. And subscribe, comment about how bad my editing is, and how I should have edited out all my ums and uhs and breath takes. But until next time, sayonara, bitches.